Welcome to the final episode of Tekpub's Playing with Backbone series. In this special screencast, we take the work we've done on the MongoDB Explorer and roll in MarionetteJS right underneath it. Why? Because it's the abstraction we have been working towards, but it's already done. What is MarionetteJS? Well, it's the result of working with Backbone on a daily basis for many years. Derek Bailey, who is Marionette's creator and maintainer, extracted many of the patterns that you've seen me use in this series, and he plugged them into a framework. That is Marionette. Here at Tekpub, we like to support the community whenever we can, so we're going to give this video away for free so we can support Derek and his awesome project. Personally, I'm really impressed with the thought and effort Derek has put into this project, and I think it's invaluable for any larger Backbone work. Hope you enjoy the show. Let's get to it. Sitting here with Mr. Derek Bailey, the final episode of the Backbone.js production here at Tekpub. How are you, Derek?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Rob?
I am recovering.
Recovering
from this experience. The interesting thing is, as I record every episode, and I'm done with it, right? It takes me a week, sometimes longer. And people have been asking me, why are you taking so long? I'm like, it just takes that long to do this. And then the follow-on question is, didn't you do this beforehand? I mean, you should have this. I did. I wrote this entire app beforehand. I don't know why it was so hard the second time, but man, oh, geez.
This was the whole thing about teaching, right? I mean, you can build something yourself for yourself, and it's all good and dandy, but then you try to teach someone else, and suddenly it's 1,000 times more difficult.
No doubt. Well, so that starts us off on a good footing. Let me just say straight up front, and I said it the whole time, Backbone itself is not terribly difficult.
Right.
The concept's really easy. Unfortunately, where Backbone sits is square in the middle of hell in terms of, right, like you have JavaScript on one hand, and then you also have to use the DOM, right? And then you have to understand evented programming, asynchronous evented stuff. Those three things, and Backbone sits in the middle, and you're in for pain.
Yeah, it's a pretty big, nasty, perfect storm there.
Exactly. So that leads me to my first question with regards to Marionette. Marionette is, let's just call some sanity on top of Backbone, I suppose. But how much Backbone does someone need to know and understand to use Marionette?
Well, it depends on how much you want to know about the problems that Marionette solves for you. It's a what's the best way to put this? Do you want to understand why you take that medication every day? Or do you just want the doctor to tell you to take it without knowing what your life would be like without it?
Okay. Well, medication's not necessarily an abstraction, but I suppose it could be an abstraction over an illness. Well, so here's my point is this, that like for ORMs, right? ORMs, that's always the big thing. It's the original leaky abstraction. Leaky meaning you had to know SQL and what's going on in the database. You had to go one layer down. Therefore, the abstraction leaks. And my guess would be that you can't use a tool like this without knowing some Backbone, right? Or can you?
No, not at all. You really do need to know Backbone before you use Marionette. And honestly, if you're just starting out with Backbone, I wouldn't recommend using Marionette. I would really say you should learn Backbone first on its own, building really small applications just to get your feet wet and to understand why you build Backbone the way you do. And then once you start seeing some of the repeated patterns and running into some of the pain and the heartache that you've run into in this series, then you'll start to see where Marionette comes from and why it's built the way it is and the problems it solves.
So maybe it's a good way to look at this. Like Marionette is essentially a set of helpers, maybe?
Yes, very much so. The first and foremost, it gets rid of a lot of the boilerplate and pain that Backbone gives you by being unopinionated.
Okay. I like it. I mean, it's simple enough, I think. Well, we'll see, because we're going to plug this in right now. And so, finally, the final question I had for you is, you extracted this because of the real-world work that you had going, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. That's one thing I really like about Marionette, is that you extracted it from real work. And as opposed to a lot of frameworks, I can name a few off the top of my head. Like, well, I mean, ASP.NET MVC, it had Rails to kind of pattern itself after, but it wasn't extracted. It was thought up.
Right.
Like, hey, this is how we can do this. And that's not a bad thing. But sometimes there's these weird edges to it that you don't quite understand. Why are they doing it this way? And it's kind of because, well, it's echo chambery and so on. This came out of real world, and there's definite reasons for each part of it. So to see that, we have to plug it in. So let's go plug it in, shall we?
It sounds like fun.
Okay. Well, so this is where I left off with the last episode. And I started the last episode by saying I really tried to back myself into a real corner where everything hurt. And I got there because that's what working with Backbone is, unfortunately. And it's not Backbone's fault. You're just working with really wacky technologies like we already talked about. So the good news is everything works. The bad news is I don't know if I'm terribly proud of it. But it works, right? And that's kind of where we always get to when we say, the whole ship it struggle, right? Does it work? Does it fit spec? Ship it.
The whole startup thing of if you're not embarrassed when you're first shipping it, you're waiting too long.
Exactly right. So where do we start? I want to, there's a couple things in here that just smell. So this navigation thing, while I think it works and it's readable and I'm okay with it, I know that you probably are looking at this going, well, we could do this way better. So I'll let you tell me what we should do, how to get started, and so on. You're familiar with all the code. We've gone through it.
Yep.
You have some opinions about it. So what first?
Yeah. So before we get started, I do want to say very briefly that one of Marionette's core philosophies is very much the same as Backbone in terms of providing building blocks, pieces that you can just pick and choose what you want to use from whenever you want to use those pieces. So it's not an all or nothing endeavor. It's not like you're trying to switch from Node.js to Ruby on Rails. So that being said, what I like to do to begin introducing Marionette into an existing project is find the smallest, safest, most comfortable place that we can to replace one little thing.
Okay.
And then once we have that replaced, we'll take the next step to replace the next little thing. And we'll never do it in a way that will be painful or cause a tremendous amount of work unless we can see that there is an immediate benefit in using Marionette. And by the time we're done with this, we'll end up having most of, if not all of, your code replaced with Marionette, but we'll do it in a way that allows you to see the benefit of each piece that we're replacing while we are replacing it.
Sounds like a good goal.
Let's see. It's a tremendous goal. It's one of those pie in the sky things that I've been able to repeat over and over again and blown the minds of many of people doing so.
All right. Well, let's start here. We'll download. Look at you and your whippy zippy fun stuff here.
Yeah, that was developed by a company over in Germany, I think it is. They did some really awesome work on that design.
All right. So I've got a couple of files here. Backbone Babysitter, Backbone, Marionette, Marionette Min, Wrecker, jQuery, JSON2 _. How much of this do I need?
So you've already got Backbone set up. You've got Backbone, jQuery. You probably have the JSON2 library, which is optional. So there's a couple of different approaches, which is what this zip file provides. You can do the all-in-one Backbone Marionette min file, which has everything you need packed right into it. Or you can do piecemeal. You can take the individual pieces and include them yourself. Now, if you're using something like the Rails asset pipeline, I really do recommend the piecemeal approach because that lets you keep the individual parts updated easier. If you're not using something like a pipeline or another build process to concat and minify everything for you, just go ahead and grab that min file. And for our purposes, that min file is probably going to be the easiest thing to do. That way we just have the one file to include in the project and we can get going.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I have that in there. One other thing I was going to ask you is a lot of JavaScript libraries, if you're not, I know Ember does this, if you're not using the min file, then it considers it like the development. So this might be the development, and it actually outputs a lot of debugging information for you.
Yeah, I do not have the
Okay.
debugging information in there yet. That's something that I've been talking with a few people about recently. But the non-minified version it certainly does help in debugging because you can actually see the code easier and
Jeez,
see what's
Derek.
going
I
on.
didn't think you
I
sucked
know,
so
I
much.
know. I'm awful.
Okay, well, tell you what. Let's be good. Let's be good developers. And what I'll do right now is I'll just, I'll say 9, even though we're in episode 10. Okay, good. And so get checkout -b. I'll just call this Marionette. Switched. Okay, there we go. All greens. Kind of
Yay.
neat. That's WebMatrix is pretty cool. I have to say, I like it.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Okay, so Marionette's in there, and I assume probably the first thing we're going to need to do is to add it to...
Yep.
All right. This is what I did to Ben Sherman when we were working with his stuff. I made him let me drive, if that makes any sense. I think I have everything. Yeah, good. Okay, we are plugged in. My whole mantra this whole time with this whole series is baby steps. Don't ever assume anything works. So I'll refresh this. Yay. So look, we don't have any problems. It's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Hit me.
So, you got Marionette plugged in there. First thing we want to do, like I said, is find a little spot that's going to be easy to put these Marionette pieces into. So if you go back over to your browser real quick, I want to take a look at some of the pieces that you have. So this is your home screen where you get this list of databases, basically. And you have a list of databases on the screen there.
Yep.
Each of those has a little bit of functionality. You can click on them or click delete or whatever.
Yep.
So this is basically what I would call a list view or a collection view in Marionette. So I actually have a marionette.collection view that we can define and build a nice little list like this.
Right.
But before we do a list view, the list view, of course, contains items. And in Marionette, I have an item view. So let's take a look at what you have for your item views right now to list each of those individual databases. And let's see if we can replace your version with a Marionette version and see what happens to the code.
So what I have right now is a straight up list view. In initialize, I just bind to events in the collection, add, remove, reset. And then I'm not doing much different anything. I'm just looping over the item view, setting the model, rendering it, and then I'm actually stuffing everything into an array.
Okay.
And then I'm using this .l.html, which I probably shouldn't do. Actually, let me just fix this. Didn't we solve this problem before?
Yeah, I think we did. It's one of those things where it works some ways in some scenarios and other ways in others.
Yeah. There we go. I'll just fix that there right now. Okay, so yeah, that's what I'm doing. Let's make sure that works. Baby steps, Rob. Baby steps.
Actually, I don't think that will because it's an array. Oh, no, it does work. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess jQuery is smart.
I heard that too. So that's it. That's my list view and item view.
Yeah, that's great. That is almost line for line what I started with when I was building my list view with Marionette. It's super simple.
So let's go and see if we can replace this. Maybe what I'll do is I have a database list view right here. I bet you we can. Let's just see if this works. The database list.
Well, let's do the item view first before we get to the list view.
Okay.
All right. So where you have Congo.item view right there on line 29, you can actually just replace the word Congo with Marionette because I happen to call it Marionette.item view. Beyond that, what does your showDB function do? When is that getting called? That's from the events. Okay.
Yeah, so this just gets the click of the link and it navigates us off.
I get it. Okay. So at this point, you happen to have built a pretty darn nice structure for your Congo.item view, and I'm happy to say that Marionette.item view works exactly the same from the basic API.
Well. Let's see.
Let's refresh it and see what happens. Oh, okay. There is no item listened to. What version of Backbone are you on?
Don't know.
I'm betting you're on 09.2, and you need to update to 09.10 for this version of Marionette.
Okay. Here's how to download it. Backbone Marionette zip. Okay. Well, this is cool because, yeah, I need this, and it's here. Woohoo!
Right. It's right there in the zip file, everything you need.
So, this is already minified?
No, that is the unminified version of Backbone.
Okay.
So if you do want the minified version, you are going to have to go back out to their site and grab it.
I think I can live without it.
I prefer developing with the unminified versions, honestly. It makes it easier to debug.
Yeah. Okay, so we've updated Backbone. Let's see if that changes anything. Choop. Hey!
Yay!
It works.
It does.
Cool beans. Okay.
Yeah. So good for you for building a good API into your Congo.item view.
Why, thank you.
All right, so the second thing would be to take the list view and replace that with a marionette.collection view.
So, like that?
Yeah, there is one minor difference between yours and mine. On line 47 there, that item view should be a lowercase I for the marionette item view.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Dude. No way.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Look at
that's
Go ahead
cool.
and test out your add and delete functionality as well. See if that works.
Boom, boom. Adding. It does. Deleting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So, hold on. If I delete that, it's gone, right?
Yep.
Which is exciting. Refresh it. It's still there. But
Oh, so it didn't really work, did it?
no, what? Derek, what kind of magic voodoo trickery do you got going on there?
Well, yeah, sorry. There's a couple of different things going on here. First of all, if you go back to your item view, so in your Congo.item view, you had a remove function in there, which did your whole confirmation to remove the item and all that kind of stuff.
It's this guy right here. Yes.
Yeah. Well, in Backbone 099 and later, Backbone.view has a remove method built into it. But here's the thing. Backbone.view remove method only removes it from the DOM. It doesn't delete the model. It doesn't clean up anything. It just removes the DOM elements from the DOM.
Okay. All right. That's all right. So then what I'll need to do is just have my own remove function.
Yeah, exactly.
So
name it something other than remove,
Right.
because
So looking at this, my first inclination is, wait, I layered in I don't want to call it an abstraction. I layered in a helper and I ended up with more code.
yeah. Well, you moved code around. You didn't really end up with more code.
That's true. Good point. So am I getting anything else from using a Marionette item view here that I can't no one see? Kind of like memory management or...
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff built into Marionette's item view that you would not get from your standard Congo view without writing a couple of hundred more lines of code.
Oh, okay.
Including memory management, as well as some additional UI features and other ways to bind to models that make it really, really nifty to do things.
Okay. All right, so it's worth it to do it. Good. So that was simple. Tell you what, all the other list views are the same, so let's, with the magic of video editing, I'm going to go and just plug everything in, because they're all the same. Let's do it now.
Let's do a montage.
Okay, I have plugged in Marionette Magic. I just literally overlaid it on all my list views and item views. I'll tell you what, I'm thinking about this. If I would have started with Marionette, I'm just thinking about all of the code that I wouldn't have had to write. Would have been nice.
Yeah, so speaking of code that you wouldn't have had to write, that render function with your Ace editor right there on the screen, that's looking kind of gnarly.
Yeah, so should I explain this in probably a little bit more detail here?
Yeah, let me know what's going on there, why it's doing things the way it's doing.
Yeah. So let's understand why I have the Ace editor in here. It's really handy. My thing that I really want to do is to make it so that people can edit JSON directly. Feel like they're editing the Mongo document, not going through some weird UI trickery.
Right.
And part of doing that is, look at this. It highlights errors, shows you what's going on, tells you there's a bad string.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, the Ace editor is rad. and it's even groovy. It's the thing that powers the Cloud9 IDE, if you ever use that. So
Oh, okay. So that's the GitHub uses that, right?
yes. In fact, a little bit of trivia. I contributed to the ACE project, the C Sharp bits. So
Nice.
yeah. So if all the recognition and keywords and stuff, and I even got credit on the project site. So if you go look at C Sharp on GitHub, using my code.
Nice.
Anyway, so to get this to work, as you could imagine, I mean, this thing is really powerful JavaScript stuff.
Yeah, it's like an entire plugin system of its own, right?
Yes, exactly. The way you get it to lay itself out is to say, I want you to drop yourself into this div tag, this ID tag here, and then it takes care of the rest. If this element is not in the DOM, it throws an error, which I guess makes sense, right?
Yeah. A lot of widget control suite things are like that. jQuery UI, Kendo UI, I mean, they all have various pieces that are what I call DOM dependent. They require the actual live DOM in the browser visible in order for them to work.
Right, and Backbone doesn't work that way necessarily.
Yeah, it really doesn't know anything about that. It only knows about a Backbone view only knows about its individual element, and whether or not that element is in the DOM is not really so much baked into Backbone's view.
Correct. So to get this, so here I have dueling issues. The first thing is I clearly want to use the ACE editor. I also want to use Backbone. So I need to accommodate this. The reason I want to use Backbone is because I want to have this editor view here, because the editor view, which is going to hold the ACE editor, I want it to have a model so I can remove it, to destroy it, and do all the things that you can do, right? Wire up events. So I'm kind of having to do two things. To accommodate this, I went all over the place, but it turned out to be a little bit easier than I thought. So the first thing I had to do is I had to render the editor view on initialization immediately. So in order for that to work, I had to, in index.js here, I had to tell it what element to render itself to, which I hate doing, but you have to do it. This is what I do to get around it. So since it knows what element it's going to render to, now what I'm able to do inside document.js is I can call render immediately, and I pull in the template, I compile it, right? And the template is simply this guy right here, right?
Right.
It's got an ACE editor, div tag, and everything, button save, so on. I compile it immediately, and then I jam it into this .l. This .l is, as I just said, the pound editor div tag right here. That is already in the DOM.
Right.
So now that it's appended, ACE editor is now in the DOM, and now I can have my cake and eat it too, so to speak.
I gotcha. So you're doing all of that just to get your view instance attached to the live DOM so that when render is called, you're already in the live DOM and you can actually stand up the ACE editor.
Yeah, and it does two more things, which is pretty cool. It instantiates the editor once, and you don't have to do it every single time. So render is called only one time. And so what I do later on is I just call set model, and what that does is it just sets the value in the editor.
Well, okay, so you're just reusing that view over and over.
Exactly. And in order to get that to work, you can see how far down this goes into the rabbit hole. To get that to work, I had to, on my app layout, I had to tell it we're working in the editor, or now we're working in details. And so it's doing this detail and editor region toggling, hide and show.
Yeah.
Which is silly, but you know what? These are the things you've got to do when you're working with Backbone sometimes, right?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it depends on your goals. It depends on the plugin. Like in this case, if it's really expensive to get the ACE editor up and running, yeah, you definitely want to do something like this. Now, if it's not so expensive, if it takes, a couple of milliseconds to get that thing up and running, then, well, maybe it's not worth doing all of this at that point. But before we get down to this, I think we can clean up your view that wraps the ACE editor quite a bit.
Okay.
And then from there, we'll see if we can clean up some of the rest of it and make it snappy without having to do all of that code to reuse that view instance.
All right. What do we do, senor?
So first thing, of course, is to replace backbone.view with marionette.itemView.
Oh, okay.
All right. So you have a render method down below. Well, Marionette provides a render method for you, and it does almost line for line those 3 lines of code on 81 through 83.
Okay.
So we don't really need those lines of code in there, but we do need to know after this thing has been rendered, go ahead and do all of this stuff. So Marionette provides the ability to have Marionette do the rendering for you, but still give you a chance to modify the DOM and the view's element and do things that you need. So change the word render on line 80 to on render with a capital R.
Oh, so this is a callback.
It is a callback. And this is built into Marionette's item view. Whenever the Marionette item view calls the render method, then you'll get this on render, which happens just after the view has been rendered.
Okay.
So if you save this, you should be able to refresh your browser, and hopefully it'll still show your editor correctly.
Good gravy. Look at that. Shoot.
Excellent.
All right. Okay. Derek, you're batting 1,000 so far.
So far, I'm sure I'll flub once or twice, but
Okay.
I think we can also change things up a bit so that you don't have to do that EL assignment on initialization of the view.
Now this will be interesting. Okay, how do you do that?
And this is going to be a couple of different steps. So this is where I might actually make a strike or two.
Okay.
So we're going to leave this as a Marionette item view. That's all good and well. Get rid of that initialize method. We don't want to call render directly from the initialize. That's generally not something I like to do. If you have a specialized case like you did, okay, fine. But in general,
right.
Let's go back to the place where you are creating this editor view instance now.
All right. So that is right here in index.js where I just have an edit function, right?
So the purpose of line 16 there is to get your view instance and get it immediately into the DOM. You're just attaching that view to something that already exists on the DOM.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to introduce a new concept from Marionette here called a region.
Okay.
And I think you have something like regions because right down there in your app layout, you say detail region, navigator region, things like that. So in Marionette, I take the idea of a region directly from Microsoft's Prism framework. And a region in Marionette manages the visual portion of something on the screen, some element on the screen. So your editor element, for example, a region, a Marionette region, can manage what is being displayed in that element for you, so that you never have to think about pound editor again.
I like it.
You make that assignment once and you're done.
Okay.
So to get that running, what you can do here is say, create a variable and assign it to a new marionette.region. Let's call it editor region just for consistency and simplicity.
.region?
Yep. And you can literally copy and paste your object literal from that view instantiation, so the EL pound editor. That's the syntax that I use inside of a region constructor to tell the region what element on the screen it is managing.
Okay.
Now that we have that, let's go ahead and get this thing up and running and rendered on the screen immediately still, but we're going to do this through Marionette instead of through the immediate assignment. So instead of assigning the view to the EL, we now have the region managing it, but we still want to get the view into the region.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do now is say editor region.show, and in parentheses, because it's a function call, pass in new congo.editorView.
See. Oops.
So here, you're creating an instance of your editor view and then telling the editor region to show this view.
Okay.
Since we're no longer assigning the view instance to the element, the view will not be attached to the DOM right away.
Right.
That means in your view, in the onRender method, when you try to call the ACE editor code to get that up and running, it is going to blow chunks. If you want to actually go ahead and show that just to verify that it's going to blow up, that might be fun.
And
yeah, so it's
the error that is so annoying. Can't read property env of null. Okay,
Right.
thanks.
Yeah, so what that means is you tried to instantiate the ACE editor, but it wasn't available in the DOM, so yeah. So back in your item view, we're going to change onRender.
Back in onRender,
Rename that to onShow.
Okay.
So this onShow method, this gets called by the region whenever you tell the region to show your view.
Nifty. Okay.
Yeah. So this region, the great thing about it is it works with any Backbone view. It doesn't have to be a Marionette view.
Okay.
But if you provide this onShow method, the region will call the onShow method after it has placed your view in the DOM.
Okay. Are you telling me this is going to work right now?
It should. Cross my fingers.
Almost.
Almost.
So I saw the view flash up there, or the editor, so it did get thrown in there, but can't call set model of undefined, and that is from my base class, and that is because in my base class,
because previously you were assigning your editor view instance to Congo.editorView.
yeah, which I can do again, right?
Yeah, you can totally do that. So right there on line 18, just take out your new Congo.editorView. Yeah.
So I'll take that out, and yeah, so I'll just Rob. Go. Voodoo.
Look at that.
All right. Well, I mean, I'll tell you, look, it's neat that it works, but it kind of just seems like we've just shimmed the difference, if you will.
Yeah, basically. But the value here, it becomes a lot more apparent once you realize that you need to replace a view instance in the DOM over and over and over again.
Well, as I'm looking at this should be going here. I mean, because look, editor region, same words, right? So I should be able to do that, shouldn't I?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, Marionette provides a layout which is very similar to your app layout there. A few differences, but it's very close. So
Okay.
let's go ahead and do that migration.
All right.
Since we're looking at that.
Okay.
So what we want to use is a marionette.layout.
Okay.
So create a view definition like you would any other Backbone view, but instead of extending from backbone.view, extend from marionette.layout.
Oh, because we're extending it because we're going to add to the base class. Yes.
Exactly.
All right.
So those two regions that you had up above, you can copy and paste those down into the Marionette layout and wrap those in their own object literal called regions.
All right. Okay. Drop it in there. Okay.
All right. So a Marionette layout is very simply an item view that has regions within it. So we already introduced the idea of a region. It manages some visual element. It allows you to stuff content into that element at will. So a Marionette layout, it'll render a template. You can pass it a model. It'll do all that good stuff. And then within the rendered template, you can tell it to attach to various elements and set up regions for those elements.
Okay. So, well, because there's a number of regions or things I have up here: navigation, details, and editor. So I'm gonna guess that I have to do something like this, right? Is that about right?
You're talking about your navigator view?
Yeah, so that's up here. That's this guy.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, that should work.
Okay.
And then we'll have to get your Congo.breadcrumbs into that region, correct?
Yes, this guy.
Okay, easy enough. One thing you want to change real quick on line 28, Congo.appLayout, capitalize the A. This is going to be a class that we instantiate.
Right, thank you.
The other thing on line 23, you have the assignment of the EL. We'll do that when we create the layout instance.
Okay. So as I'm looking at this, and I'm sort of understanding what we're doing, but I'm starting to think that if we don't start complying with the regions and stuff, we might be breaking things. Am I right? Like, in other words, here I'm passing in the L straight up to the view.
Right.
According to Marionette, I should be using a region.
Yes.
Okay. So I assume that we're gonna tackle that one piece at a time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Baby steps.
And of course, this really comes down to philosophy and preference. My philosophy is I want one thing and only one thing to ever know about the actual DOM elements, and that's usually a region.
Right.
And then I use a region to manage displaying of my views. I never want to assign a view directly to an element, and I never want my view to know how to place itself in the DOM.
Yes, makes perfect sense, and I get that. Okay,
All right.
I'm gonna assume that everything's gonna break right now.
It probably is.
Let's just see. What?
Yeah, kind of sort of getting there.
How did that not break? Okay, Derek, Voodoo.
Well, that didn't break because you were manually assigning that navigation.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
But we can make Marionette do this for you.
Yeah, so it looks like render editor and render details is broken on the app. Makes perfect sense. All right.
Okay.
So what do we do next?
All right, so that navigator. Let's make the layout manage the navigator. So up above, where are you creating that navigator view instance?
Right here.
All right, move that line.
Okay.
Let's take that line to right below the app layout creation. Right here, we are going to pay attention to the app layout having been rendered.
Okay.
Because a region within a layout will only be able to manage the contents of that element after the view's template, after the layout template has been rendered.
Okay.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? You got to render the template in order for the element to be there,
Right.
and the element has to be there in order for the region to manage the content within that element.
Okay.
So, right below line, whatever that is, do a congo.appLayout.on.
Right here?
Yeah.
38.
And listen to the render event on render, and then pass in a callback function. And within there, move line 41 into that. Let me ask you a question. Are you ever directly referencing congo.breadcrumbs anywhere else in the app?
No.
Okay. Just assign that to a plain variable instead of attaching it to that namespace.
Okay.
All right. And instead of assigning the element right there,
Yep.
we're going to say on the next line, congo.appLayout.navigationRegion.show, and pass breadcrumbs into that.
Okay.
Now, there's an inconsistency. Previously, when you were creating that breadcrumbs view, you were passing in #nav as the element identifier, but your navigation region is set up as #breadcrumbs. Is that correct?
Oh, thank you. Okay, that looks good. I like the wiring. It feels much more backboney.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So let's save this and let's see if we can get that breadcrumb displaying on the screen correctly.
Nope. And that's because our app layout. And remember, in the base class here, we have render details and render editor.
Oh, that's right.
The router is failing, and since the router is failing, the breadcrumb view is not rendering right. So
yeah. So let's I think we can solve that fairly quickly just by moving those render details and render editor into the new layout.
Okay.
So once again, we're not really adding more code. We're just kind of moving code around right now to get it into the Marionette structure.
Right. Okay.
Well, let's run it and see what happens. That's kind of my philosophy.
Well, all right. We have no errors, but nothing's showing up.
Oh, I know why nothing is showing up. We're never actually calling render on that layout.
Right.
I forgot that on line 55, you're assigning that app layout to an existing element. So all we really need to do is on line 57, just get rid of line 57 and line 60.
Oh.
Because we don't need to wait for the app layout to be rendered since the element is already in the DOM and we're already attached to it. We can just go ahead and stand up the breadcrumb view and show it.
All right. Woohoo! Okay, that's showing up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the details aren't showing up, but the editor is.
Okay, so this is probably where your high details show editor functions come into play.
Correct. So what's happening here is that the app layout, all it really has in it is the editor. There's no details. Nothing's being rendered. Details is not showing anything because it's not appending anything into the details thing. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. So basically all we've done is we've put the navigation into place, but we haven't put the real content
Right.
into place.
Yep.
Gotcha. So we need to go back up a few lines in this file and find the place that was previously creating all your content views.
Yeah, so here, if you don't mind, I'm going to just simply do this. I want to clean this up.
And actually, I think we can get rid of those 2 lines of code.
These two.
We don't need that region instance anymore because we now have the editor region inside of the layout.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we can get rid of line 18 and then move line 19 down wherever. So that's going to have to be moved down below the creation of the app layout instance.
So how do we have an editor region? I'm a little confused here.
We have an editor region on the app layout instance.
Right, got it. Okay, so that means that applay.editorregion.show.
Right.
So let's see if that is going to work. Yes, it does.
Excellent.
What I am doing down here is when I navigate to the right here, so index is going to show all the databases, right? So before it was app layout render details, but now what I should be able to say is detail region.show congo.db layout, and then databases fetch. So that's actually going to double things up, I think. Yes. So it works.
Right.
But the editor is now showing up, and it shouldn't because we want to toggle it.
Right.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
The whole reason that I was doing what I was doing with the editor, having 2 regions on the editor and the details view, right, is that this editor needs to be part of the DOM when you render it.
Right.
Given our new app layout and our regions and all the things we're doing, is that problem solved?
Mostly, yeah. It's the way that we have it set up, we're still, of course, rendering the editor right away when the application stands up, but we really don't need to anymore. Since we have regions in place now, we can let the region tell our view when the view has been placed in the DOM, and then we can just render the editor into the DOM after it's in the DOM.
Yeah, well, so what I'm thinking is maybe we just have a detail region and not an editor. I'm just going to swing and try this. Sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's try it.
So, okay. So we actually don't want to do this right here. What we do want to do is we want to show the breadcrumbs. Okay, so we know that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's give this a whirl. Let's see what happens. Okay, good. That's exactly what we want to see.
Right.
All right. So then instead of doing, so in every line here, I should be able to replace render details with detail region.show. Or if I wanted to shortcut it, I could just, I don't know. I don't like all this dotting, but I guess it doesn't really matter. It's more clear. Yeah. Show database, show collection, and index. Okay, everything but show editor. So if I refresh this, let's open this. So I should hit that, and it works. Awesome. Okay, so that's what we want. The final step here is we don't have render editor because what we should be able to do, I want to be able to say something like detail region show, and then I want to show the editor, but I want, so the editor view, right? So I should be able to say congo.editorView. Here,
you're going to want to create a new editor view instance, passing that model into it.
Oh, okay. Now, this is where we get stuck before, because the editor view...
It needs to be in the DOM before you can run the ACE editor, but we're using onShow right there on line 77.
So is this editor going to be... Okay, well, let's go one step at a time. So, okay,
sure.
So we just say var editor view equals new congo.editor view, and then we'll pass in the model equals model, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually understanding the way your brain works, which is...
That's kind of scary.
All right, let's just see if this works, right? So, almost. So it's showing the editor.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
It didn't get the document into it.
Right, and the reason that it didn't is because back in the editor view, what we need to do, right, so we'll just say this dot set model.
Yeah, you don't need to do that at all. I would probably rename that set model to populate editor or something.
Equals, and if it's not set, a new thing, right? Good, bam. And then, so this dot set model, right? So that's okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you wanted to rename this to...
Yeah, I just don't like the name set model because that implies that you're going to change the model on the view, which I guess you kind of are, but...
Look at that.
Hey, look at that.
Okay. Okay, this is good. We're cleaning this thing up. All right. So the one thing that I'm not hip about is having to cycle Ace Editor every single time. But it was pretty quick. I don't know. Do you think I should care about this?
I really don't think you should. We are potentially introducing a memory leak right here, though. Since you're assigning Congo.editor equals ace.editor right there, are you ever referencing Congo.editor over and over and over again?
Well, I could just do that, and then we're only instantiating it once.
Yeah. So let me just say, you would want to do something like this if the editor takes a long time to spin up and get put in place. Like if it's a noticeable delay, more than 100 milliseconds, to get that editor spun up and visible, then this is probably something that you would want to do in order to reduce that flicker and that downtime from the user's perspective. If it's a really fast thing to get up and running, I wouldn't do that. I would just create a variable and move on.
Okay. All right. I think you're right. So the thing that I was actually initially worried about was that for some large embedded documents, that might be the case, but I don't think it will be. Okay. We'll leave it. All right, so let's just make sure that it's not working.
What happened there?
So
go back to your code. I wonder if it has something to do with assigning the editor to a global variable.
Got it. Yep, you're right. Oh, I think it's because I had...
Oh, yeah, because you were grabbing the same instance every time, and it was never re-rendering itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people out there are probably, dude, you should... Hello, dum-dum.
I've had people tell me that they sit there and watch my screencasts and yell at the screen, it's right there, it's right, just change.
Right. Okay, so then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep this all down here so I can use that variable. Okay, so this dot model... Right. Is this or a new Mongo document? That's what we want. .json stringifying that and setting the value, clearing the selection. That is the most annoying thing ever. Good. Okay. Good. It's working. Solve that problem.
Hooray!
Wow. All right. Okay, so we don't care about that. We're going to remove that code right there.
You missed your comma there.
Oops, thanks. And back in here, this is looking, it's looking really swell. Gee, Derek, I think we're done. Save. Save doesn't work.
Oh.
That's okay. All right. So this is why, got it. This is why I made it a global, because it needs to be used. How do we get around this? So I've made editor internal. So what I need to do now is I need to pull the value out of the editor.
Okay, I would instead of assigning it to a global variable, then I would just assign it to the view. So this dot editor equals, and use this dot editor everywhere.
Okay, I actually did that before, and for some reason I was having a heart attack about it.
Yeah, the heart attack you have about that is, oh crap, I'm using this, and this changes all the time, and but in this case, I can guarantee you that this variable is going to stay the same. It's going to be the view. Because that's the way I built Marionette.
Because I'm Derek Bailey. I think that's what you meant.
That's right.
All right, so hit save. It's saved. Yeah, I like it. So I just, I'm navigating back to the collection view here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I kind of want to show a message. Is there anything in Marionette you've got like a notification view or anything like that?
No, I don't really have anything like that built in. That's kind of application specific, and I like to think of Marionette as providing the infrastructure so that you can build your application framework. And I kind of consider notifications to be part of your application specific needs.
Well, what if I just did something stupid like, you're going to hate me for this. Just something.
What does that even do? I've never used that effect method of jQuery.
What?
No, seriously, I never have.
It just makes everything flash like that.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it just shows like something happened.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of effects, shrink, grow, slide down, slide up, all that kind of stuff. Fade in is another one.
Oh, okay. So those I've typically just used the method call like jQuery selector.fadeIn.
Yeah, some of them are built in. Okay, so we got to wire up a little bit more here. So our editor view is Marionette. Everything is marionetted, if you will. In our document view, yeah. Do I need to make... I can just use a regular old view, right? For this. There's nothing that I'm doing with these option views that's anything special.
You're rendering that template, so you'd want to use a marionette.item view.
Okay.
So, and the reason I say that is just so you can avoid having to write your render method again.
Right. Okay. So this is a document option view, and let's go back and just make sure it shows up. So, okay, good. It's showing up this guy right here. So if I hit add, and right, so this is the router throwing this error because we're going to a new URL, schlonk users new, which means that we got to come down to here and new document, right? App layout render editor, right?
Okay, so that's from your router.
Yeah. So this should just work. Detail region dot show editor. Oh, right. I need these two lines here. Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know how to get around this duplication because you need it just in case someone comes in on a URL straight in.
So, yeah, you need to change line 81 to use congo.editor document. Yeah, and then you can get rid of 80. Yeah, so code duplication. This is where I would start extracting those 2 lines of code into a function that you can just call. And then if you start getting a collection of functions that are related, extract those into an object.
Yeah, I could do that, but I'm not going to. There we go. All right, so this is showing good. And, right, name is Derek. And saving. Whoop! Look at that. That works. Derek, do you mind if I delete you?
That's kind of a personal question there.
Did we miss any tricks with Marionette?
Oh, quite a few. We've just barely scratched on the surface of what Marionette really provides, and only from a view and region perspective. There's a lot more going on with Marionette that could really make this into a much more scalable and robust application.
Are you saying it's not scalable and robust?
Yeah, I kind of am. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That's not necessarily bad. It comes down to a question of, do you need scalability beyond what you have here? Do you need more robustness? Are you going to have large areas of the application that need to be shut down and started up so that you don't waste memory in the browser and things like that?
Well, the app's working. That's exciting. Do we miss anything? I'm looking over this and it can't be that easy.
Well, it kind of is. I mean, that's like I said, one of my goals with Marionette is to be able to just drop in one piece at a time when you need it, where you need it, and then eventually you start seeing, oh hey, I took all of these pieces, brought them over to Marionette, and now there's this one extra little thing I can do to make it even easier and add a little bit more feature and functionality. And
well, in looking at this, okay, so in my base class, we're getting rid of the abstractions. We got rid of the app layout. I believe we got rid of the list view. I guess we'll find that out pretty quick.
I think so.
The item view is gonzo.
Yep.
I think Congo.
Your Congo.view is gone as well, because that's Marionette.
So every view just about has been replaced, and I'm losing my abstractions. This is good, except for the layout.
Yeah, deleting code. That's always fun.
Right. So I do have the layout being used here and there, like in a database. Come back down here. Congo, right, database layout view. I stole this from you. I did. I think it's when I called you in my panic, Derek, why is this working? And you had showed me how to do this. So
yeah,
this should be pretty easy to change, right? Marionette.layout?
Should be. Yeah, so this should change from layout ready to
I'm gonna get
an on-render function.
That's right.
And then on line 68, instead of database list.append, you would be calling, this.database list.show, and just pass in your DB list view instance. You don't have to call render.
Nice.
Because another thing that I actually neglected to mention so far is Marionette's regions will call the render method for you.
That's nice. Okay.
Yeah, so that cleaned up quite a bit.
Let's see if that works. That's this view right here. Do-do-do-do. All right. Oh, looks like I have a... So is it layout view or just layout?
Oh, it's just layout.
Okay, that was my problem. Darn it. I was hoping to catch you. And double dang. Look at
All
that.
right.
Okay. So then that means we can go to collections and do this down here. And this would be on render. Right. New collection list view, right? Option view. Okay, good. And this is show. And show. And do. Just like that. Oops, without the capital O, because we're not using .NET. And if I go over here to collections, double bam slam, look at that.
Excellent.
That is good. So if we go marionette.layout and we go to documents, down below, right. On render, show. I think that's it. So those are the layouts that I have. And it works. Wow. All right. So, yeah.
It's like there was somebody thinking about these things and building a framework for it or something.
Don't get smart with me. Deleting my base class. That's kind of exciting. We lost our base class. This is what I was hoping would happen, but I didn't think you could pull it off. And there we go.
Let's just see how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Wow. Dude, this is quite a good refactor. Okay. Going back over here, we've lost an entire base class. We have Marionette in place. Our layouts are working the way we want them to. Everything is happening nicely. I rather like this cleanup right here. This is neat. So this init function is initializing all the things we need and then basically wiring them. There might be something better, I don't know, maybe on start, would you say, to show the navigation region?
So yeah, there's a couple of things that we could do to use more Marionette and not necessarily clean this up any, but just show you how I would do this with Marionette. Because I don't really think it's going to be any different necessarily. It's just going to be the Marionette version of it.
Well, we are marionetted, so hit me.
All right. So Marionette includes an application object. So you can create a new marionette.application, and that application object is your bootstrapper. It's like the main function in a C# application where everything spins up and spawns and gets rocking and rolling.
Okay, so what would I do here?
So you can start out pretty simply. Instead of assigning Congo to an object literal, assign it to new marionette.application and pass that object literal into the constructor function.
Really?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I'm quite proud of. I've gone through this scenario enough where people start with object literals and convert to Marionette that I let you just pass your object literal directly into your marionette.application, and all of that is now right there and available on your Congo object. This will probably still work.
Wow!
Amazing! The reason it works is because you've provided all of your methods to start and init this thing and get it up and running. And the marionette.application says, look, you provided these things for me, so I'm going to let you use them. But Marionette provides its own start method as well, and it gives you some additional functionality that you can use to help clean up your code and keep things a little more segregated and separated and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
So right now, you have that init function. Take all of that code, take that entire init function, and cut from the application object. So just cut line 4 through 28.
Okay, just cut it.
Yeah, just bear with me here. Follow along. Line 4 through 28.
Okay.
Now, down below the application object definition, at the very bottom,
Right here?
do congo.addInitializer.
Oh, okay. Add initializer is a method, right?
Yeah, addInitializer is a method, so you're going to pass a callback function to that. And then paste everything that you just cut. Of course, get rid of line 31 there, because that's...
Oh, right.
And then line 54, get rid of that. So an initializer in Marionette is pretty much what it sounds like. It gets run to initialize your application. And a Marionette initializer gets run when you call the application's start method. Now,
Oh.
you've overridden the start method by passing in your own start method into the application definition. So we're going to need to move the code from that start method somewhere else as well.
Okay.
And typically, I put those few lines of code either in an initializer or in an event that runs after the initializers. So for now, just paste it right there. You can get rid of congo.init because this now is the init function.
Yeah.
And everything should be going. Let's see what happens when you run this.
Wow. Okay. If that works, you freak of nature. Look at that. We did not rehearse this, by the way. I wanted to see Derek cry, and he's not yet. All right, we're getting there. Wow. Okay. All right. So, do you have now? I imagine that Congo has got some events now. Could I just say? Let me guess. Congo.on start. Yeah?
No, unfortunately, actually, I really think it should be called start, but I called it initialize. Well, there's two events. There's before initialize and after initialize, and I got them. I named them kind of funny. I named it initialize : before and initialize : after, kind of following the Backbone : namespaced thing. So here's what I typically do. I usually have an initialize after callback function, just like you're doing there, and I almost always put the Backbone history start in the after initialize.
Yep.
Now, I would put that layout region show, I would leave that in the initializer. Yeah. But I almost always do backbone.history.start after the entire application has been initialized. So the benefit that we're gaining here is that we can add 1,000 initializers to the application object. You could have 350 million JavaScript files, and each one of those can call congo.addInitializer, and you can add all of those initializers, and then there is that one congo.start method call that runs all of those initializers. And then after all of those initializers have been run, start up your history.
I like it. Okay, now what?
Well, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go with this? We could get into modules. We could get into some additional view types that I'm not necessarily convinced that you would need in this application. There's quite a bit more going on that we could do, but I think for a good introduction for getting your application migrated into Marionette, this is pretty darn stellar.
Well, I have a feeling that we could probably sit here for, a week, going into all the different nuances of Marionette.
Weeks on end.
But I do think that, we covered what I needed. Number one, we got rid of my base class and the abstractions that I was writing. The application, as far as feature goes, is just about finished. I think it is finished. Does what I needed to do, and now I feel like it's a whole lot cleaner.
Well, good.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm really happy with the direction that we took with this and where we ended up. There certainly are a good number of things that Marionette could offer to help you grow your application, but if you're saying your application is darn near feature complete, then let's leave it like it is. Let's move on and make lots of money on this open source project.
Well, I was hoping at some point that you would come on or I don't know, write a really flaming blog post about why my use of this router is completely wrong, but I kind of like it. I'm using it as a controller. Yeah. I know you don't necessarily care for that. Would you using Marionette, would you do this a different way?
Yes, I probably would. I would extract most of that code out into a separate object. I get kind of picky about my routers. I want my router to be, the definition of the routes, and then at most 1 or 2 lines that call to another object so that the other object can actually do all of the real work. I don't like looking at large routers full of code.
So what you might do is have your own controller. Is there a Marionette controller?
Yeah, there actually is. It's an object that is really, really, really poorly named, quite honestly. I originally started using it as a controller for my routers, and so that's why I called it controller. But it's become such a tremendously useful object. I use it anywhere that I need to have Backbone events, and I need to have a close method to clean up after itself, and I need any of these little things that I constantly do inside of my Backbone applications.
Okay, so in this, would this be something like Marionette controller extend?
Yep.
And then, so what we would do is say new document, show editor, all that stuff, doing what a controller typically does, put it in here, and then have the router sort of just call the controller. Is that right?
Yeah. So you want to do something crazy real quick?
Sure, why not?
Let's move all of your functions from that router into that controller. Just move them.
All of them.
Go ahead.
All of them, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
All of them.
All right. Except for the routes.
Except for the routes.
So, okay, I know what you're thinking here.
Uh-huh. Then go down and change your router definition to marionette.approuter.extend.
Okay.
And then change routes to app routes.
App routes. Okay.
Get rid of that comma on line 99. Internet Explorer will complain about
Yes.
that. Now, where are you instantiating that router?
Up in the initializer, right at the very top, right there.
Okay, so inside of that constructor call, pass an options object and pass a controller parameter.
No way.
No, I'm sorry. Don't call it
Oh,
options.
I see. Right.
Call it controller, and pass in a new whatever that controller name you gave it. Congo.
I think I just called it a controller. No way. You're kidding.
No, that should work.
Okay, so
Yeah, so this is basically what I do. I really don't like having methods inside of my routers. I like my routers to be clean and simple, and every now and then I do have some code in there for some special case, but generally speaking, I get rid of the code in my routers. I don't like my code to
it just works.
Yeah.
Derek,
It's amazing. It just works.
you don't write code this good.
No, I don't. This is not me at all.
So, all right. So I will say this. While this feels like just, you're waving your arms and just throwing in some misdirection, it feels that way, but
it is.
But if you decide you don't want to support state anymore, right? Or you don't want to have URLs, or you just, whatever, these URLs change, that makes this more flexible. In other words, you could say, no more URLs. Everything's going to be, starting from the root, and then you have to navigate along. You ditch the router, and then you can just use the controller, if you wanted. That's okay. I like it.
Well, not only that, but you could have your controller available to other areas of your code.
Yep.
So instead of just going through the routes all the time, you could make a button click call your controller function.
Yes, I like it.
And then suddenly you have the same piece of code running, whether it's called from a router or a button click or whatever else.
Rabbit holes. I like this. This is good. Well, we are coming up on an hour and some, but I think this is worth it. I hope folks out there have learned about Marionette and how it works. I've had a good time.
I've had fun too.
I hesitate to even ask you this, but is there anything else you can think of?
Not without really going deep into some rabbit holes, and I think we'd be pushing 2 to 3 hours if we tried to do that.
So, heading over to MarionetteJS.com, let's see, you've got your docs somewhere.
Yeah, so if you click on, MarionetteJS on GitHub, all of the docs are listed in the README right there on the home page.
Okay. Source code and downloads. Oh, wow.
Right there.
Jeez, look at all this.
Yeah, look at that. And if you click on one of those links, it's just a file sitting in the repository, which is great because I get a lot of really good pull requests to update the documentation. People will notice something that I missed or misspelled or something that's just not quite right, and they'll send in pull requests. So the documentation, I've heard, is quite stellar. I get compliments on the documentation on a regular basis.
That's great. Well, that's so helpful. It is really, really helpful. You know what's going to be even more helpful?
What's that?
This video right here.
Excellent.
No, I am going to turn it out for free
Front
for everyone. Yay! Hooray! All right, Derek, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, good luck with Marionette and everything else.
Thanks.
All right, talk to you soon.
All right.